accountability starts with clarity. We have to have clarity of what our expectations are, then we actually have to do what we say we're going to do.
From humble beginnings, Insurance Claim HQ has grown to one of the largest property casualty firms in the country. We didn't do it alone, and you shouldn't either. Every week, we're talking to claims professionals and top experts from all over, all to help you grow your business and make you stronger. Let's level up together. I'm Galen Hare. Welcome to the Level Up Claims Podcast.
In the trades and construction world, turnover is often treated like bad weather, something you complain about but can't control. But what if its real issue isn't the labor market? It's leadership. Today's guest, Traci Austin, is on a mission to close the leadership gap in the trades. With over 20 years in HR and workforce development, she helps contractors and field adjusters stop blaming and start building cultures people want to be a part of. Through her Tough Talk blueprint for handling hard conversations, she's equipped with the practical strategies that work on the job site, not just in the boardroom. Let's meet Traci Austin.
I'm Galen Hare. If you're serious about winning in this industry, June 12th of 2026 matters. The Level Up Claim Summit brings together serious operators who want to sharpen their edge and separate from the pack. No fluff, no vendor circus, just real conversations with people who are actually moving this industry forward. Seats are intentionally limited. We keep the room exclusive. Once the room is full, registration closes. If you're ready to compete at a higher level, don't wait. Go to levelupclaim.com and request your seat now. I'll see you on June 12th.
So Traci Austin, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
So
Spring is coming.
yes, it is. It's warming up here down in the New Orleans area. A little bit warmer than I'd like it so far, but I can feel the sweat on its way. We just want to talk to you today about leadership in the trade space, and what it seems to me is a leadership gap in the trades. Why is retention a leadership issue and not a labor issue in the trade space?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to say it's an and both, right? It's definitely an and both. So why is it a leadership issue versus a labor issue? So when we hear folks leaving, what is the first thing we hear of why they're leaving?
This
'Cause
place,
I can make $1 somewhere else, right?
yeah, this place sucks and it doesn't pay me enough.
Right. It's those two things. Well, when folks go to look for another job, are they typically looking for it because they're happy? Are they looking for it because they're unhappy?
Unhappy, of course.
Right. And what's the easiest thing to tell my employer? All the reasons why, or it's just a money thing?
It's just a money thing, of course. You underpay me,
Right.
so I have to go somewhere else.
Right. Because it's the easy conversation, right? And so the question is, do we love having hard conversations or do we love having honest conversations?
I'm not sure anybody likes either.
Right.
Hard or
Well, and
honest.
here's why yeah. And when we have honest conversations, typically when you think about like the most honest conversations you're having with folks that you trust.
Right.
So, can we trust the organizations that we're working with? And do we trust the leaders that we're working with? I know.
I'm sure that's a specific question, but I know the answer in my workplace is yes, but I'm sure for a lot of
Right.
people it's not.
Correct. And in your workplace, what makes that trust there for you?
Um, I know when I have an issue, I can bring it to the proper place and it'll get handled. And I know it's not going to be turned back around on me like I'm the problem or I'm just complaining. And this is the way it is. So that's, how it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you just described for me is leadership. So you just described leadership, right? So you didn't describe a labor, you described a leadership plus versus a labor plus, right? So when we look in the trades organizations and especially our folks that are out in the field every day that are, swinging the hammer, running the saws, laying the concrete, whatever they're doing, right? Do they have that trust with their immediate supervisor that they can bring those things forward and not have them turned against them? What we typically see time after time is that answer is no. And therefore, it's a leadership issue versus a labor issue. Now, why that answer is no, there's a plethora of those. However, I'm curious, like Parker, what do you think that no is? Why is that a no there?
Probably because whoever is in the leadership role or right above that person that they report to, um, probably just doesn't care what the lower level people think or have to say, or that maybe they have the terrible attitude of that's fine, I can just get somebody else to swing that axe or pour that concrete.
Yeah. So the attitude piece, 100%. Some of them have never had any training. And, it's like they're in that role because they did something good enough to be promoted to the next level,
Hmm.
but yet not yet understanding that. And they probably don't feel that they have that trust either. So that's typically what we see. And the reason why we see this as a leadership issue versus a labor issue.
Gotcha. Um, and then speaking to the leadership issue and kind of the scenario we just played out, why do you think most leaders try to avoid the hard conversations we were just talking about, or just kind of bulldoze through them and say, "Hey, this is it, and that is it."
Yeah. So here's the thing. I'm not the smartest person in the room, nor am I ever. So for those of you listening, I want you to answer this question in your head first. Like for you, why is it hard for you to have those conversations? And I'm curious, Parker. I'd love for you to answer that question as well.
Yeah, well, I'm a bit of an empathetic guy, so I worry about hurting people's feelings probably more than I should.
Right.
Especially when it comes to, people who are, maybe report to me. We have a good relationship at work. We have a good, personal relationship. And man, I really don't want to mess that up type of thing.
Right. And I love how honest your answer is because it's so often what we hear. So can I ask a couple questions?
Sure.
And so you didn't know I was gonna turn around the hosting of the podcast on you
Yeah,
today, did you, Parker?
I did not, but I'm ready.
All right.
At least I
So a
think I
couple
am.
questions. I mean, maybe, right? So a couple questions. And the first one is, what is the cost of not naming for them the impact of the performance issue that just came up? So let's just say that, things weren't measured correctly and put in, it's sloppy work, you can see gaps, and we don't bring that up. What are the consequences of that?
Well, of course it continues. And
Mhm.
anything I need to use their work product for to complete mine takes me more time to have to go back and fix it, or my work product suffers.
Mhm.
It's extremely inefficient, um, and not to sound disrespectful, but there are certain things, in my practice that I like done a certain way. And it's just because I figured out that doing them that way, um, is necessary for me to do better work. Um,
Right.
so, those are just a few things I can think of.
Right. So the cost of not having that honest conversation with that individual means you're doing more work. You are not giving them additional work. My guess is that, at least for me, there's resentment in there that starts to creep in. Like, I resent them because they're not doing what I need them to do, but I never actually told them what I needed or gave them the feedback
Of course.
that what they were doing wasn't what I needed.
Of course.
So my question is, and this is not meant to be a catch 22, right? But my question is, the fear of not having the honest conversation was, I really want to keep this strong relationship with this individual. And yet when we don't have those honest conversations, do we still keep that strong relationship?
Yeah, I think eventually the relationship slowly over time, is going to degrade only because of what you just mentioned, um, that I'm going to start to resent, their, poor work product. But at the same time, it's because I haven't called them out on their poor work product.
Right. Right. So are you excited to go have a hard conversation, Parker?
I've gotten to a point now. My direct assistant, we've been together long enough where I don't really worry about hurting her feelings anymore. And
Yeah.
she knows how I am, and she knows that I'm just trying to get our stuff done and to do it right. So, um, I'm lucky in that sense, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I just heard you say is we have the same goal.
Right. Of
And
course.
when we can agree on, hey, what is the goal? And are we both working towards that same goal and agree that that's the most important thing? Now we've got common language to work towards, which makes these conversations much easier to happen because we're both in agreement that we want the same thing.
Right. And it's sort of a feeling out process too. Like I said, I'm lucky enough that my team has been together long enough to where I've had the tougher conversations, or I've made corrections, and I've learned, how my team member is going to react to those, and I've been able to adjust, how I do them, how I present them, um, to kind of get the correction made that needs to be made without, degrading my team member, making them feel bad, or really worrying about, oh man, I shouldn't have said that like that because now she's mad at me, and
Mhm.
the work product is going to suffer out of spite, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Um, so what do you think of people, whether it's in the trade space or any space? Because I feel like you hear this um, all the time. I don't hear it in my workplace, but I hear it from friends about their workplace. The T word, toxic. Um, so what do you think the real reason is people either think, believe, or that their workplaces are actually toxic?
Yeah. So first thing that I do when I hear that is I get curious. So what does toxic look like to you? Because definitions become really important. So my definition of toxic could be completely different, Parker, than yours. And when I make an assumption about what toxic is, I could believe that it's communication and it's actually um, not communication in an organization. It could be that um, the it could be like there's actually threats happening, or like toxic can mean so many different things. So when I hear the word toxic, I'm not going to buy into toxic until I can understand what toxic is, right? And I think that this is such a useful skill for any leader is let's not take things at face value. Let's get really curious about what it is so that we can understand what's behind it and the actual facts behind it so we can come up with what is it that we're actually asking for. So when somebody tells me they work in a toxic work environment, I say, I'm curious, what does that actually mean to you? Or what makes that work environment toxic?
Right. And sometimes I feel like people confuse, especially on the industry I'm in, the legal industry, and being an attorney, people sometimes confuse high standards with an unhealthy work culture. Um, and
Correct.
and
Correct.
what do you think about that?
Yeah, I do agree that high standards can sometimes be confused with a unhealthy work culture. And this is where we get into okay, so tell me about, there I've never heard anyone say they're holding me too accountable. It might be their standards are too high. And I say, tell me about the standards. Tell me about what that looks like. So coming from this HR background for an attorney, you're like, okay, I love the fact that we're going to separate out the junk from what the actual facts are, right?
Hmm.
Because feelings matter, of course, but we need to get down to what actually happened. What is toxicity? Like, did somebody throw a come along across the field at your head? Is that what you're defining as toxic, right? I mean, this has happened. So is that what we're defining as toxic?
I
Yes
think
or
that
no?
would check the
Okay.
box.
Yes. Yes. And there's other ones. There's a couple of them where I'm like, did you should be calling the cops on that one, not me.
Right.
Right? I mean, there are some of those. So but when we can define what it is, now let's just go, we threw the come along across the yard. Okay, how did that even happen? Like, what is the culture, which we define as here's how we define culture. Culture is the behaviors that you allow or do not allow to happen inside your organization. So, what is the culture that allowed that come along to be thrown across the yard and allowed that to be okay? Now we can say, okay, if that's toxic, here's the actions that are happening. But what else is happening? Do we have some verbal threats happening? Are other things being thrown? Like, what specifically is it? Because once we can start defining it, now we can start creating accountabilities around it. But yet we have to have folks that actually want to and are capable of having those conversations and holding folks accountable to that.
Right.
And when we say we're going to do something and don't do it, it actually makes the culture worse.
Right. And it sounds like it all kind of gets back to the leadership issue, right? I mean, I'm sure somebody could fly off the handle and throw a come along at somebody, right? But chances are somebody in a leadership role either has exhibited, maybe not behavior to that extent, but has
Or they have.
shown, that they could have, or they've just shown that, everybody that they're in charge of, that behavior like that is okay because they've done it themselves. So,
Yep.
um, and sticking with the trade stuff, the toxic workplace stuff, it kind of ties into it. Turnover, especially in the trade space. I've worked with enough contractors to know, hey, it's hard to find good people, and when you think you found good people, it's hard to keep them. In your opinion, is there some type of magic pill for our you can give our audience for large turnover problem in the trade space?
Yeah. So, first thing I would say is let's define turnover, right? There's lots of different types of turnover, and I will tell you some turnover is really good, right? So, I like to separate it into regrettable turnover and non regrettable turnover. So, regrettable turnover is those we really, really did not want to lose. Okay. Non regrettable turnover means like, yeah, they left. We didn't necessarily terminate them, or it could be you terminated them. They left, they're never being rehireable. We took a deep breath and we're like, "Thank goodness they are gone." Okay? And
Right.
then we throw a little party. Okay?
Sure.
So there's those, right? And so it is really important that we separate the 2. And now that we've separated the 2, what I love to have organizations do when they're looking at that is say, "Okay, my turnover, am I losing is it regrettable or unregrettable? If it is a high level of regrettable turnover, we really need to look at it and say, are we hiring the wrong people and or are we hanging on to people longer than we should? Because what happens is your great people end up leaving because they don't want to put up with it anymore and they're typically carrying the weight of the workload of the folks that we actually want to leave. And so, I'd say there's not necessarily a magic pill. However, we can definitely shift turnover from regrettable turnover to non regrettable turnover. And one of the ways we do that is we start holding folks accountable. And accountability starts with clarity. We have to have clarity of what our expectations are. Then we actually have to do what we say we're going to do.
Understood. So what role, if anybody's listening and they run a company, own a company, work for a company in a leadership role, what role does their HR department play in retaining people and their growth? Would you say it's the most pivotal role?
No, absolutely not. I mean, come on, Parker. I'm HR. You work with HR. We just kind of push paper around and people hate us. No, I'm kidding, right? The HR has a very specific place, but the most pivotal role to turnover is the immediate supervisor.
Okay.
They hold the relationship with the folks, right? And so they're 100% holding, I would hope they're holding that relationship. And when they're not, is when we start to have, much deeper conversations. But, by the time it ends up in HR's lap, which is what, 2 breaths before it ends up in your lap, Parker, as an attorney,
Right.
right? By the time it ends up in our lap, the thing's already done for the
Yeah,
most
it's
part.
over.
Yeah, it's over, and now we're, like, clean up on aisle 7 going, "Alright, the come along just was thrown across the yard, and now what are we doing with this?" Should you have known that that was going to happen? Yeah, maybe, but maybe not, right?
Hmm.
So that most important piece, it goes all the way back to what does that, immediate supervisor and their role in it. So when we look at turnover, there's 5 drivers of turnover that I like to look at. And I typically look at it in terms of engagement versus turnover, but it has a direct correlation. So the 5 drivers of engagement are: is the person in the right role? Are they doing the thing that, they're really good at? Are they doing that thing that they're meant to be doing, right? I am an individual that is very driven. I'm a decent communicator, I would say. I tend to move really fast. I'm a change agent. I keep high level details, but I am not an individual that like is going to go get into a spreadsheet and do data analysis for 8 hours. Like, no way. Not that detailed. Can't do it. Poke my eyes out with needles, right? You put me in that role, I'm gonna hate life.
Hmm.
So it's really important we're putting folks in roles that they're truly aligned to. So the first lever is fit to role. The second lever is my leader leading me the way that I need to be led? And so we've talked a lot about a leadership here. The third is the team. Am I on a team that is like turning up my strengths, or am I on a team that's playing whack-a-mole on my weaknesses and is actually making my job harder because they're being jerks? There are those teams out there, right? And then there's
Right.
the teams where the ones they have your back, they're going to kind of block and tackle, and you're going to do the same for them, but we're playing to each other's strengths. Um, and then the culture is the fourth one is, hey, is the culture of the organization one that I work well in? So, I work really fast. I tend to block and tackle well. Does my organization do that, and does that work? Or am I somebody that does not, right? And then the last one is seasons of life. And sometimes, I don't think we sometimes pay attention to this, which means we need to be human. We need to like, notice that there's feelings out there and have a little bit of empathy, right?
Right.
And so like seasons of life is, hey, somebody's parent just died. There's going to be, are we going to see a little bit of a dip in performance? Yeah, probably. Can we work with that around some things that are happening? We've got folks that are on a huge career ladder and they want to grow, grow, grow. Guess what? They're going to show up very differently than they're probably going to show up after a breakup or after, other things that are happening. So it's just being aware and knowing folks bring their whole selves to work, and they bring their whole selves home. So like, yes, we are going to get this mismatch. It's not completely separate.
Gotcha. So, in terms of, people listening to this who are running workplaces, how can someone build a workplace that their good people um, don't want to leave? What have you seen um, in companies that have exceptional retention?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to go along those 5 levers of engagement that I just talked about, right? So first one is, are the folks on our team in the right role? And so, there's a lot of different ways that you can tell that. We tend to use behavioral assessments. So, for example, like we use predictive index to really look at that and look at the roles. So that's one of them. The other One of the other things that we really see is we're also looking at and saying, what is the growth that folks want to have, right? We know 1 in 3 people leave organizations because they're bored. So, have we laid out that career ladder for them that's allowing them to grow at the pace that they want to? And does the organization have the growth opportunities internal so that that individual can actually grow? Another one, so that's fit to role. Another one is that leadership piece. Is there clarity over what winning actually looks like? The organizations that have the lowest turnover, everybody knows what their job is. They know how they fit into the organization, they know how they fit into the team, they know the impact that they're making on the end product and on the end user. They understand, the importance of the work that they're doing. So a lot in the trades, like, I'm looking at a building across the street. I know the folks that built that building, and when I'm talking to them and they're saying, I get pride every single time I drive by a building that I had a part of making. That's what is so exciting to me. So then for me, if I'm their leader, I need to know what building they were on. And if I hear something in the community about, hey, this Carriage Works building, blah, 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 I'm going to make sure that I tie that back and go give that appreciation back to that individual that worked on the building. So we're tying in what is important to them and that impact, and appreciation is a big part that goes into that. So that's the leader piece. And that also goes into the team piece. Does my team make my work harder or does my team make my work easier? And the organizations where our teams are actually working together, and a lot of this is designed by leadership. We can design our teams to hate each other and to have a ton of infighting, or we can design our teams to actually flow and work better together.
Gotcha. Yeah, I spoke to a friend of mine this morning who's looking at making a change of employment. And the one thing that's holding him back is he really, really loves his team leader. Um, and he's like, man, I don't want to work for anybody else. But I don't want to be here anymore. But if I could figure out how to clone this guy and bring him to my the next place I work, I would. But it's really interesting, to hear you say pretty much the most important factor is, that person's direct supervisor really makes the difference. And for him, it does. It's the only reason why
Mhm.
he's stuck around so long. It's because
Right.
he loves that guy. So
And I'd be curious for your friend, like, what are the reasons you wanna leave the organization? And what are what are those? Is it your board? Is it, it's a culture mismatch? What is it? And can he go actually make some requests that
mhm.
shift what those things are outside of the supervisor so it actually makes it a better environment?
Cool. I'll suggest that to him.
And that
Um,
takes trust, right?
yeah, it does. It does. So kind of the last question I have for you, we ask everybody who comes on this podcast. It is the Level Up podcast. So we ask everybody, what does it mean to you to level up?
Yeah. So what it means to me to level up, and I will say that the answer to this is different based on different stages of life for sure. But, for me to level up, it is in how I'm connecting with our clients so that they can get that result. But quite honestly, for me to level up, it also means that I have to pay attention to what exactly I need. And there's the and both of that. Because if I'm not taking care of myself, there's no way I can take care of my clients.
Great advice. Well, thank you so much, Tracy. We really appreciate you being a guest on the show today. And we look forward to seeing you again in the future. And I hope everybody listening gets a chance to implement some of the good stuff Tracy talked about today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Parker.
So we just spoke to Traci Austin, transformational leadership strategist, founder and chief talent officer of Elevated Talent Consulting. Really enjoyed talking to Tracy. I think she gave some good advice on turnover in the trade space, how to fix that turnover, and really how to structure your leadership in your organization to make sure that when you do find good people, you keep them. So hopefully everybody listening today can take some good pointers from Tracy and implement them in their business, and be on their way to finding and keeping good talent.
Follow us on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. Subscribe to the show if you want more conversations like this. And if you're serious about operating at a higher level, join us June 12th at the Level Up Claims Summit. Limited seats, exclusive room. Request your invitation at levelupclaim.com.